Good morning, Austin New Church. You look beautiful this morning. All the sadness off of my soul, and I smell those sweet cherry blossoms, pouring all the gladness into my soul. In winter, I believe you. In springtime, I see you. It's so good to be with you. My hope has come. Lord, you make all things new. Your love is my breakthrough. Now I sing hallelujah. My hope has come. Yeah.
Shadow, and I have been tested like silver and gold. Lord, your faith has taught me to cherish that this life affliction, well, it's not my home. In winter, I believe you. In springtime, I see you. It's so good to be with you. My hope has come. Lord, you make all things new. Your love is my breakthrough. Now I sing hallelujah. My hope has come. Yeah, well, I'm not gonna give in to this mortal frustration. No, I'm not gonna give them any standing ovation. Well, I will lift my soul, God, with no hesitation. 'Cause between you and me there is no separation. In winter, I believe you. In springtime, I see you. It's so good to be with you. My hope has come. Lord, you make all things new. Your love is my breakthrough. Now I sing hallelujah.
Good morning. Welcome. We hope you had a wonderful holiday, or maybe it was a hard holiday, but we know that God is with us, whatever season, like we were just singing about, whether it's winter or springtime. And we're so glad, whichever season you're walking into this morning with, that you chose to make time to prepare your heart for Advent today. We are entering a whole new season, and we're excited about what God has for us. So thanks for being here. I have a couple of announcements that we want to let you know about coming up this month. Whether you're new or you've been with us for a long time, we've got a couple of ways that we hope that you'll engage in the weeks ahead. And all of these things I'm about to mention can be found on our website under the header Advent. That's where you can find all the links to get registered and to participate. Today is actually a fifth Sunday, and if you've been with us for a while, you know that typically, if there's a month with 5 Sundays in it, we don't come together the last Sunday, and we take that Sunday off to go out and serve the community. And during COVID, we've continued our services, but we've still looked for ways to serve on our fifth Sundays. And so I'm going to let you know about some today that will be available to you the rest of the month. First up is our partner, Santa Rita. This is a government housing project on the east side of Austin under the leadership of Miss Lupe. We've been partnering with them for a long time. And we have an opportunity to come alongside some families this month who could use an extra meal. So through a $50 contribution, you can provide an H-E-B gift card and also a gift card to a local restaurant to one of these families. And it's kind of neat. Ms. Lupe told us that there are some restaurants who've been good friends to Santa Rita in the past and donated food, and now they've come under hard times with COVID. And so this is a way to both support a family and a local business that's struggling. And so you don't have to go out and pick up those gift cards. You will go follow the link on our website, or it'll be on our social media as well. We'll administrate getting the gift cards. You just make the financial contribution, but the thing you do get to do as a family is make a card, a Christmas card, to go along with the gift card. So when you sign up, we'll send you the names of some family members, and you can make your card out directly to them, let them know you're praying for them, offer some encouragement and Christmas cheer, and we will get that to them. So all that information, again, is on our website, where to drop the cards off and how to get those gift cards. We're also launching our art gallery next weekend. You've heard us talk about this. We are filling our building with the art of 20 local artists, some ANCers, some Austin artists you might know of. I've come together around some of the themes that we're going to be talking about throughout the month of Advent. So you don't want to miss it. Sign up. We have some limited groups of people that we'll be letting walk through the building, so it'll be safe. We ask that you come in masks. The art will be spread out, will be socially distant. And again, those are small groups you'll be moving through with. So go ahead and sign up for a time. Those are Sundays starting next Sunday up until Christmas. And we'd love for you to come be a part. And when you do come, there's another way you can serve. We have another partner that we love, Posada Esperanza. They're also on the east side of Austin, and Posada offers housing to newly arrived immigrants and refugees in Austin. And so they need gently used coats, hats, and blankets for women and children. And so when you come visit the art gallery, you can bring those things with you and drop them under the Christmas tree, and we'll get those to women and children who need them. And there's a few other items they'll be collecting as well. So when you sign up, you'll get a list of everything that they're collecting. And there will be a virtual version of the art gallery as well. That'll be launching the following weekend. So if you are not local or you're not comfortable coming in person, there's a way you can experience that as well. And you can drop off items for Posada Esperanza during any of the gallery hours, whether or not you come into the gallery yourself. And finally, we have our Christmas Eve services coming up on December 23rd. We're so excited. This will be our first pseudo gathering in so long. We have 2 services, and you can sign up for those, again, on our website. You do need to sign up for those, and you sign up by your car. We have a limited number of cars that we can have in each of those services. We're already half full for the first service and 2/3 full at the second service. So get your registration in, and please pack your car. Include your family, any friends you've been seeing already who are in your pod, so that we can include as many people as possible. That'll be at Doc's Drive-In in Buda, and we can't wait to share that evening with you. So that's a lot to sign up for, but we do invite you to participate with us this month to serve and to gather as we can safely. And now we'll go ahead and enter back into worship together as we sing one more song.
You are matchless in grace and mercy. There is nowhere we can hide from your love. You are steadfast, never failing. are faithful. All creation is in awe of who you are. You're the healer of the sick and the broken. You are comfort for every heart that mourns. Yeah. Our King and our Savior forever. For eternity we will sing of all you've done. For eternity we will sing of all you've done. We sing, God with us, God for us. Nothing could come against, no one can stand between us. God with us, God for us. Nothing can come against, no one can stand between us. Your heart, it moves with compassion. There is life, there is healing in your love. You're the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. For eternity we will sing of all you've done. And we sing, God with us, God for us. Nothing can come against, no one can stand between us. God with us, God for us. Nothing can come against, no one can stand between us. Where there is death, you bring life, Lord. Where there is fear, you bring courage. When I am afraid, you are with me. And you lift me up, Lord. You lift me up. Where there is death, you bring life, Lord. Where there is fear, you bring courage. When I am afraid, you are with me. And you lift me up, yeah. You No one can stand between us. God with us, God for us. Nothing can come against. No one can stand between us.
Lord, we love you as we continue in worship this morning. May our minds be open. May our hearts be soft to your words, to your leading. We thank you for Emmanuel, God with us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks, y'all. How fancy to have a trumpet again. See if they can get offset without knocking something over. It's a little tight up here. It's good morning. It's good to see you. Thank you, Sam, for all those announcements. I think Sam may have done the most in the fewest words. There's just a lot going on, and so don't not pay attention now. Now, of all times, focus and look at the website and check out what we're doing. You know, it's not super easy to continue to express ourselves as a missional presence in Austin during COVID, but we're doing what we can. And I think it was your idea, Sam, months ago to rent a drive-in to do Christmas Eve. If you're new to our community, this is not in the notes. This is free. No extra charge for this. We actually started doing Christmas Eve services 10 years ago because you can rent any space on Christmas Eve because who wants it? Well, Ratchet Little Church Plant wanted it because we couldn't find any place to be on Christmas Eve or Christmas morning back in the day when we, were borrowing space. So we're keeping with that because it seems like a good idea. That way you get to be with your family on Christmas Eve and on Christmas Day. And someone had the idea, and I remember thinking in the staff meeting, there's no way we're still going to be quarantined by Christmas. Well, aren't we glad that we put the money down? So that's going to be super fun. Don't miss the opportunity to sign up for that. If you don't make it in, then you'll be forced to try to squeeze into somebody else's car, and that's going to get really weird. So anyway, all sorts of good things coming at us. So welcome this morning, actually, to a brand new year. That's the truth about Advent. Today we start our Advent journey back to the manger. You'll know the journey. It's in your heart. It's been around you probably most of your life. Back to the manger, back to the simple little feeding trough made of wood, tucked away in a cave, hidden somewhere on the margin of empire. We begin that journey again today. Today we start our pilgrimage home, as it were. It's the beginning of the church calendar. A pilgrimage where we discover what was always already true about God, namely that his name has always been Emmanuel, God with us, as we sing every year. He was never far, as it turns out, never distant, never deaf. He was always already present with us in our longing, in our desperation, even in the grit of our humanity. It's an earth-shattering truth, really, if you sit with it long enough. The kind of truth that takes a lifetime to fully own and internalize, and all these centuries later, we're still winding up each year. We're still beginning our journey as people of faith by dedicating 4 weeks to the art and science of getting back inside the truth of God with us. I think if we're honest, more often than not, it still eludes us, doesn't it? Sometimes we lose sight of the truth of God's nearness to us. And in all the shopping and the gift giving and all the working and wanting and waiting, we swerve and we misremember. I think we do our best to make room in our hearts for something. We just aren't sure what that something is sometimes. It's as if we've misplaced something essential, something important, something we're desperate to find. And no one needs to tell us this. It's something we know deep in our bodies and deep in our bones. So we grab and we clench and we hold as tightly as we can to anything that feels new or novel or promising, things like that we think might hope to fill the void, things that we hope might finally bring rest and renewal and comfort. But I wonder if new is what we're actually in the market for. I think as often as not, we're confused by this good news, by the possibility that we actually aren't waiting for anything, at least not for anything that we don't already have. And that's the irony of Christmas, isn't it? Why in the world would we be waiting for something that we already have? The answer to that question might reveal the deepest truth about what it means to be human. So these next 4 weeks of Advent will be our chance to name the longing, to own the irony, to come home again to the manger that tells us who we really are, who we've always already been. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me slow down a little bit. We've got 4 weeks to do this. We're back to following the lectionary now. And most of you know this, but for those of you who are new, and there's always new faces in our crowd, I believe deeply in the discipline of following the lectionary. I do. Maybe you aren't sure what I'm even talking about. Let me just explain it as simply as I can. The lectionary is a 3-year, multi-year master plan for getting through the entire biblical narrative. Every day, including Sunday, has 4 assigned texts. It has a psalm. It has an Old Testament passage, often considered a historic piece. It has a reading from an epistle, mostly Paul, but also James and Peter in the New Testament. And then it has a gospel reading from Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. It's got 4 pieces every day, but specifically Sabbath, the Sundays. And so for clergy of other traditions, preaching from the lectionary is a given. They don't have any other choice but to follow it. That's what's expected. That's what they're trained to do. But that's not true for me. I choose to preach this way. I could take us anywhere worth going. I know you trust the team here. Anywhere worth going. And sometimes during the long stretch of the year between Pentecost and Advent, that's exactly what we do. That's what we've just done. But for the great 2 seasons of anticipation that anchor the church calendar, Advent leading to Christmas and Lent leading to Easter, and the season that falls in between that we call Epiphany, I choose to follow this storyline. I do it because I'm always looking for ways to connect us to the global church. We aren't just an offshoot of some interesting way of doing denim jacket church with cool music in 2020 on South Lamar in Austin, Texas. We are actually part of something deep and wide and diverse and ancient and weathered, an organism that listens, an organism that knows how to follow. And so I tether us whenever I can. And here we are, journeying these next 4 weeks into the most shocking reality we've ever had to contemplate. That God is not out there. That God is not up there, that God is not far. In fact, God is painfully near. So near, in fact, that skin and tears and strips of common cloth wrapped his fragile beginning in warmth, just like it did ours when we were born. I think the season of Advent is most appropriately expressed, at least liturgically speaking, in a building sense of anticipation. You know the story of Israel, a tiny nation chosen by God to bless all of the other nations of the earth, a tiny nation that didn't have a patch of ground that she could call her own. Every ancient power in the Middle East had their turn bullying the ancient Jewish people. And the precise moment that Jesus was born was not that unlike any other moment, as it turns out. It happened while the descendants of David, who we've just studied, the Jewish people, were enslaved to empire. The Romans were in power at the time, but they were a lot like those who came before, and they were a lot like those who came after. Just another imperial power. Today's gospel text only makes sense in the context of longing and anticipation born of suffering. Apocalyptic literature has always been a staple of Jewish thought, and you would know this if you've studied the Bible at all. Probably because they were never left alone for very long to think very far beyond being set free, being released, loosing the shackles and loosing the chains. So Mark 13 features Jesus' voice as Mark recalls this odd apocalyptic discourse that comes towards the end of Jesus' ministry. And so let me read that for us. It comes from Mark 13, 24 through 37. It reads this way. But in those days, after that suffering, we'll explain what that is later. The sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will be falling from heaven, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory, and then he will send out the angels and gather his elect from the 4 winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of heaven. Verse 28. From the fig tree, learn its lesson. This is Jesus talking. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts forth its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also when you see these things taking place, what things? The things he just mentioned, you know that the end is near, at the very gates. Verse 30. Truly I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. Then he switches gears with a different metaphor. But about that day or hour, no one knows. Presumably, he's talking about the end times. No one knows, neither the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. So beware and keep alert, for you do not know when the time will come. It is like a man going on a journey when he leaves home and puts his slaves in charge, each with his work, and commands the doorkeeper to be on watch. Therefore, keep awake, Jesus says, for you do not know when the master of the house will come, in the evening or at midnight or at cockcrow or at dawn, or else he may find you asleep when he comes suddenly. And what I say to you, I say to all, keep awake. The words of Jesus from the book of Mark, chapter 13. Now, for starters, I think it's important to mention this. It's good to get back to the words of Jesus, isn't it? I know it's a really odd passage, and we'll work our way through it in a second, but at least Mark attributes it directly to Jesus as the speaker. I love words, you know this. I love old stories that point to and foreshadow and illustrate love and life and meaning, all those things. But the words of Jesus himself are my soft spot, my most favorite pieces of this old book. This passage comes right as Jesus begins to prophesy the destruction of the temple at Jerusalem, not a very popular subject matter for his listeners at the time. And if the literal destruction of the temple wasn't upsetting enough, he tells them that some well-meaning followers will be led astray by false hope preached by false prophets or false messiahs. Jesus warns them that not only would the brick and mortar of organized faith fail, so would her leadership. Then he describes an alarming rise in tribalism, a way to go back to everyone against everyone, coupled with natural disasters. Jesus tells the gathered crowd that the faithful would be scattered. The ones who were able would be forced to flee to the mountains for cover from persecution. All of this is the suffering he describes in verse 24, the beginning of our passage for today. What an odd opening set of ideas with which to begin Advent, which marches us up to the birth of the baby Jesus. One of the tricky things about Advent is to actually cultivate a sense of anticipation. Remember, this is anticipation born of actual persecution. This isn't something that the majority of us, frankly, understand in America. And while I don't personally consider myself evangelical, I grew up in an evangelical church obsessed with persecution. Remember, we're talking about a church mostly led by white empowered men. I know, I get the irony, but this is what we were taught. You might think of it as a persecution complex. This is something that The Atlantic, one of my favorite publications, has written about over the years, and they continue to write about it. We were taught to tell ourselves that we were being hated and persecuted for our faith in Jesus when we'd get funny looks about praying at Denny's or listening to strange, oddly, constantly amateur music, you know what I'm talking about, or for not laughing at the crass water cooler jokes at work, or for maybe kissing, dating goodbye. We thought that was what persecution was. But unless you are a person of color or an immigrant or a woman, especially a woman in a man's workplace, or a member of the LGBT community, or overcoming some kind of physical disability, history tells us pretty objectively that more often than not, white European male Christians and their descendants have been the ones doing the persecuting. It isn't easy to feel desperate or ready for deliverance if we have no direct experience of persecution, which makes large portions of our text inaccessible to many of us if we don't do some extra work. But never underestimate the imagination of the empowered. We somehow feel like the world is against us, don't we? And if we don't actually have enemies who are persecuting us, we'll just make them out of one another. Never fear. In order to insert ourselves into the letters of Paul or even into the teachings of Jesus, both of which prominently feature suffering and persecution of the faithful, we have no choice but to accentuate the small little inconveniences of being Christians in the world in which we inhabit, the little ways that we suffer. Now, suffering is suffering, and we all experience it. I'm not downgrading your reality, especially at the end of a year like this one. All suffering is worth naming. It is. It all deserves compassion, I understand. Those of us who enjoy privilege might just have to do a little extra work recreating the kind of anticipation and apocalyptic cry for deliverance that Jesus is giving voice to here, that we are going to shape ourselves around during Advent. Darkening suns and moons that get switched off, falling stars and the Son of Man coming again in the clouds. It's really quite dramatic. But this middle pericope, this little idea where Jesus refers us to the fig tree, this bit makes sense. I have a fig tree. Some of you do. I actually love the subtle sweetness of Texas summer figs. In a previous home that we owned outside of Travis County, we had a huge fig tree that produced a ton of fruit. I loved that tree. So I planted one in the front yard of the new house that we bought several years ago. And I'm actually hoping it grows large enough to completely block out the view of my neighbor's house from where I sit and write. I'm up early, often well before dawn, and my neighbors are the kind of people who leave their Christmas lights up all year, and they leave them on all year. So I'm believing God for a large and leafy life for my dear fig tree that sits right there, hoping to block that view. I pay attention to that little tree, I do. But my attention to the seasonal processes of my little fig tree have almost nothing whatsoever to do with actual sustenance. I'm not hoping or relying on that little tree to actually feed my children from its yield. That might have been the case for Jesus' audience. So some aspects of this illustration are lost on me, but not all. Jesus often spoke of a fig tree as a symbol of the changing seasons, which is something that I can understand. But farmers and field hands were Jesus' targeted primary audience, make no mistake. They would have understood Jesus intuitively when he spoke of things like seeds and grass and fruit and crows. His was an earthy audience. The rest of us will just have to do a little extra work to follow along. And while I'm not a farmer like my good friend Matt is, here's what I know is true about my fig tree. There is never a time of year when something important isn't going on. Gardeners, you know what I mean. I love the time of year when the figs are ripe and it will produce sometimes a dozen a day. But there would be no time of fruit or plenty if there wasn't also preceding that an extended season of deepening roots, of falling leaves, of brilliant heat, of no visible growth whatsoever. You know, you can hold a sweet ripe fig, and in your hands you're holding sufficient genetic information for 1,000 generations of fig trees. Part of what I love about the fig, I also love about the banana, is that you can eat the seeds. They're part of the fruit. They're almost imperceptible, but oh, they are very much there, and they are there for a reason. They contain the future. All that's needed to see what's locked inside a tiny seed is time and the right conditions, and the rest unfolds all on its own. You see, nothing actually stands alone. There simply is no such thing as isolated or disconnected seasons of the year. One season flows into another seamlessly. Spring is always already on the way, and so is summer, so is winter and autumn. Each season has its own unique work to accomplish. Each depends entirely on what comes before it. Each is always already coming. This didn't become true after Jesus was born. This has always been the way it holds together. He didn't change the course of history so much as he reminded us of how it always already worked. Accepting the deep connection, the complete internal interdependence of all things upon all things upon all things is what anticipation is made of. This is what Advent invites us to remember together. God was never not already here. God was always already in love with all of you. Oh, those sentences have been so much fun to play with this week. Which means we are essentially anticipating what is already here. We are looking for something we already have. Mark remembers Jesus saying to his followers, "No one knows the day or the hour when the Son of Man will split the skies and come again," which is weird because we do. It's what we're here to celebrate. The Son of Man already came. He already is us. He already always has been. When we cry out for deliverance, we're asking for what already is. When we lift our voices and beg God for answers, he points us to what has already been said, to what is already true. Life is a beautiful gift, and we are loved. Our deliverance has always already been in motion. Our every inner longing has always already been completely accounted for by God. So then, friends, what is our work? What are we to focus on during Advent? Well, I can think of a few things. The willingness to embrace time as we wait, and a commitment to create and maintain the right conditions for such an awareness to bear fruit. Time and the right conditions. We don't control much. 2020 has taught us this. We control virtually nothing. But this thing we can do. We can wait well, and we can create the kinds of conditions required for that fig or that acorn or that broken heart or that dream or that tiny imperfect child or that unnoticed talent or that dismissed idea to fall to the frozen ground, to germinate in time and to bring into reality 1,000 generations of goodness after its kind. It's just a matter of time and the right conditions. You see, dear friends, this is the deepest truth about the incarnation. Jesus didn't suffer the ordeal of birth because we broke something that we could not otherwise repair. Birth was always going to be the way newness began. Birth has always been sacred. Mamas, you know what I'm talking about. Of course, this was going to be the way that God would remind us that he has always already been here with us, in us. God didn't have to scramble to figure out a way to close the distance our sin created. God has always been incapable of shunning what he deeply loves. Distance was never more than a way we taught ourselves to misremember our sacred origin, a way to hide, a space into which we could pour our shame and our many explanations for why God could not possibly love us. God wasn't forced to murder his own self or his son to bridge some unfortunate gap in order to find a way to let the love flow again. There has only ever been a plan A, my friends. The truth of the incarnation, the profound mystery that we are gathered to remember, to rehearse together, to reenact, to literally reassemble this Advent season is that God was always already here. He was always already on his way to the mangers of our margins to love us, deliver us, set us free. Spring was always already coming. Jesus says, just watch the fig tree. Oh, friends, do you see how this might change everything? Why did no one tell us this was the gospel when we were young? We don't have to get God's attention. We don't have to convince him we matter. We get to wake up again and again to anticipate what has always already been true. We are his beloved. He already came for us. He was never not here already. The gentle question for us is this: can we accept that? Can we accept that? Pray with me. Dear God, so near, so present, so immediate, build in us the anticipation of a deeper awareness of what's always been true, that we are loved and that you are here. Help us to sit with this truth this season, so that for the millionth time in the millionth way, you might be born anew in areas of us that we have held at bay, that you might be born afresh in relationships and spaces that have waned and died, that you might bring life, the life that has always been here. We pray in Jesus' name.
To bring peace, to be love, to be nearer to us. You have come to bring life, to be light, to shine brighter in us. Oh, we met you well, God will.
You know, sometimes we experience the power of God with us in community through the love of our neighbors. And we have a beautiful example of someone creating the right conditions for growth in the character of Elizabeth in the Christmas story. Elizabeth is Mary's aunt, who she went to visit while they were both pregnant, and Elizabeth created a safe haven for Mary as she was on the doorstep of an impossible thing. And so this month, as we explore this idea that God is already with us, that hope is already here, we can look to those whose experience has equipped them to guide us through the impossible. So we've identified a couple of Elizabeths in our community, and over the next few weeks, they will provide the benediction at the end of our service and also guide us in lighting the Advent candle. And that's something that might be a new tradition to you, but it is a way to bring your worship experience off the screen and into your home. So I invite you to maybe pick up an Advent candle or just grab a candle that you have lying around. Any candle can symbolize hope, and light that with us when the time comes. But first, we'll hear from Tara Brimberry.
Good morning, ANC. When I was a little girl, I was often called Pollyanna by my family. That's a dated reference, I know, and it comes from an old movie about a girl who saw the good in everything. She was like the ultimate optimist. I was embarrassed about that as a kid, I think because of all the teasing. I come from a family that liked to tease. But as I've gotten older and maybe just a little bit wiser, I've come to believe in the just extreme importance of optimism and how strongly that ties into hope. And optimism and hope don't have to be blind or naive, but instead, I firmly believe that they are the driving force that can get us through difficult times. And we know this is a difficult time, and it's harder for some of us than others, but statistics tell us that this is harder for women, that we are carrying the lion's share of the burden, working full-time, parenting full-time, teaching full-time, being a full-time partner. I see you do it. I know that sometimes you do it simply because nobody else will. And I know that you do it while looking at others on social media that make it look easy and do it with grace. Don't fall for that. Hope is not pretending that everything's good or trivializing that hardship is real. Hope is fixing your eyes on the knowledge that you are not in this alone, and in the confidence that our God is already in control, even when it doesn't feel like it. I firmly believe that the promise that God will get us through this is the truest thing there is. I miss this ANC family more than words can say, but I've also seen the love and the support that we have given one another through this yucky time. And if hope in God is more than you can even handle right now, that's okay. Start with this family, or maybe just one person in this family. Send that text, write that email, pick up the phone and call. Hope means that you do not have to do this by yourself, and that there are others who will walk this journey with you.
How we need your presence, Lord. So overflow in this place. Fill our hearts with your love. Your love surrounds us. You're the reason we came to encounter your love. Your love surrounds us. Overflow in this place. Fill our hearts with your love. Your love surrounds us. You're the reason we came, just to encounter your love. Your love, it surrounds us.
God, as we light this first candle as a sign of our hope, Hope that you can meet us even in the mess of our world. Hope that you still see us, though we feel we are lost in the rubble. Let this light be the guide that brings us to Emmanuel once more. O come, Emmanuel.
Spirit of God, fall fresh on us. We need your presence. Your kingdom come, your will be done here as in heaven. Spirit of God, Spirit of God, fall on us. We need your kingdom come. Let your kingdom come.
Miracle can happen now, for the Spirit of the Lord is here. The evidence is all around that the Spirit of the Lord is here.
Amen. Thank you guys for joining us, and go in peace. We'll see you next week.